I'm going to tell you about 9 of my favourite books that feature sentient houses. So if that's your thing, stick around. The first one I'm going to talk about is Thistlefoot by Jenna Rose Nethercott. Thistlefoot follows the Yaga twins who have been separated for a really long time. They're kind of estranged from each other, but they come together because they've been sent an inheritance. And when they go to pick it up, they realise it's not money, it's not items, it's a house on chicken legs. This is obviously pulls from Baba Yaga and the sort of Slavic folklore around that. What they don't realise is that someone has followed this house all the way from Kiev, where it originated, and is now hunting them down. These twins don't get along, they're very different people, they want very different things out of life, but this house brings them together and forces them to think about what they want from life, forces them to address the fact that the Long Shadow Man is hunting them down and is coming after them. This is a sentient house in the literal sense of the word, because it moves around. It's Baba Yaga's hut, it's on chicken legs, it moves around, it talks, it reacts to them, forms relationships with these twins, and it is very lovable in itself. This is such a rich story about storytelling and puppetry and pretending to be different people and sort of trying to work out who you are yourself at the same time. The twins themselves have little gifts or powers that they use throughout the story to help themselves, and the overarching plot of this is the 2 twins using Thistlefoot, the house, to do one final travelling theatre show, because that's who their parents were, that's what they did as children, to do one final time for a bit of a cash grab and to make good use of this house because they are in a position where they need the money. It is full of Jewish folklore, of really lyrical writing, of rich prose, and the character work is really detailed as well. So if you like any of that sort of thing, I highly recommend that you check Thistlefoot out. My next book on this list is Starling House by Alex E. Harrow. Now, Starling House is a book about Opal, who is parenting her younger brother and will do anything it takes to get him out of the tiny, conservative, small town that they live in called Eden, even if it means cleaning Starling House for this young bachelor who has let this place go to rot. It is infamous in this small town for being kind of haunted and kind of dodgy, and the occupants never really socialise with anyone in Eden, but Opal will risk it because it might mean that her brother gets out of town and will do something with his life. But this house has other plans, and this house has a history that will come back to bite both her and the owner of Starling House in the bum. This is a story about secrets and fairy tales and stories and doing whatever it takes to survive and to get what you need. It is very similar sort of writing to Holly Black in that it's quite stark in its juxtaposition between the human world and the sort of magical, fantastical world, but there are hidden secrets and human corruption, and it all sort of jumbles together into this really beautiful story. This can be quite a polarizing book. I've heard some reviews from people that hated it and some reviews from people that loved it, but I really loved it. And the house is reactive, the house has a personality, the house is the titular character, really, of this book. Next on my list is Keeper of Enchanted Rooms by Charlie N. Holmberg. I listened to the audiobook of this, so I would recommend the audio if you have Everand, because I believe that's where I listened to it. This is about Merritt Fernsby, who is a broke writer who suddenly inherits this house, sense a theme in some of these books, in this remote island on Rhode Island. And when he turns up and he enters the house, this house has a mind of its own. It's enchanted, it's locking doors, it's melting the furniture, it's turning the stairs into slides, it is reactive and hostile and aggressive. Luckily, BIKER exists. BIKER is an acronym that stands for the Boston Institute for the Keeping of Enchanted Rooms, and they send a housekeeper along called Huldah Larkin to help with the situation. Now, Huldah is well versed in enchanted houses and poorly behaved enchanted houses specifically, and she teaches Merritt how to calm the house and work out where it's coming from, why it's so reactive, and it's a story that builds the relationship not just between Huldah and Merritt, but also between them both in the house, and turning it into a place where they can all live together happily. This is has got a heavy romance subplot, if you like romance, but in a sort of restrained Regency Victorian sort of way. This book also has quite a concrete magic system, which is very prevalent and relevant to the house, which is discussed at length, and it's heavily involved in the plot. The villain in this story, because there is a nasty villain, is nasty. He is a piece of work. He's one of those selfish, egotistical villains, the Gastons of the villain world, where they are just really quite insidious because those people actually exist in the world. This has a toe in cozy fantasy, but also a toe in sort of like historical fiction and soft, like Regency Victorian romances, that kind of era. So if you like that sort of vibe of book, I would definitely give this one a go. This is a finished trilogy, if that helps as well. Next on my list is Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia. This is about Noemi, who gets a letter from a friend to come and visit her and her newlywed husband in their big old house in the Mexican countryside. When she gets there, she realises that the husband is not the nicest man in the world, and that the house has a mind of its own and is sending her creepy nightmares and weird dreams. And the story sort of unfolds of there. It's loosely a retelling of The Fall of the House of Usher by Edgar Allan Poe, so just be warned that there is a strong fungal theme. So if that's not your bag, this might not be the book for you. But a creepy old house with some interesting characters, and they're all locked away in this house, in this remote location, and they're all in each other's pockets, and secrets are being unravelled and revealed, and it's a gothic haunted house story, essentially, is what it is. But the house is infused with family secrets and family histories and events that may have happened that affect how it, well, I was going to say thinks and feels, but it is a house, so you get my drift. Next up is A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik. This is not just a sentient house, this is a sentient school that is trying to kill all of its students. This follows Elle, who only wants to make it through to graduation so she can leave the school, so she can survive along with all of the other classmates that get that far and make it out into the real world. The reason they are all in this school is because creatures and demons can sense magic in young children and teenagers up until a certain age, and then they are able to fight them off. So what they do, they chuck them in the school and they hope for the best and see who makes it out alive, which is just great. It's a great way to fuel an education system. The school is constantly throwing monsters at the students. It is constantly trying to hurt them, to kill them, to trick them. You're not supposed to walk alone down the corridors. You're supposed to like check chairs before you sit down in them. Things aren't what they seem. There's a lot of like mimic behaviour, as in Dungeons and Dragons kind of mimics. It is creepy, it is funny, it is the first in a YA trilogy, I want to say, and it's just really, really good. It's just really enjoyable, and it's a breath of fresh air from some of Naomi Novik's other sort of heavily fantasy, like lyrical fairy tale stuff. This is a bit more sort of sharp and witty and comedic, but it is, yeah, it's it's about a school that's trying to eat its students. Now the next one might be a little bit of a cop-out, but I think it sticks. I think it belongs on this list. My next one is A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. The house in question being a spaceship, but they all live there for long periods of time, and I think it counts because the AI system that inhabits the spacecraft is called Lovelace, and they are a character. They are an active, like, speaking, talking, feeling character in this wonderfully cozy sci-fi series. This story follows the crew of the Wayfarer and Rosemary Harper, who sneaks her way on board in order to escape Earth, and it follows their adventures and their relationships through space, trying to get to this one destination. But it's definitely not about the destination, it's really about the journey and the sort of the building the trust, building the relationships and getting to know each other, getting to understand each other's cultures, learning to appreciate the unknown and the things that you don't understand. It's such a lovely, cozy book, and although it's not necessarily a sentient house in like the strictest terms, I think it belongs on this list and I really loved it. Next on my list is A House with Good Bones by T. Kingfisher. Now this is a story about Sam, who returns home to stay with her mother for a few months after her archaeological dig is postponed. When she gets there, her mum is acting really anxious and jumpy and weird and not at all like herself, and after a night or two, she strongly suspects that something is wrong with the house. And she is not wrong. The house is a titular character in this story and everything revolves around the house. and who resides in it and what happened in that house. And I can't say any more without spoiling anything. It's a horror, it's witty, it's sharp, it's got T. Kingfisher's like classic protagonist that's easy to root for. It's easy to get behind and to understand. It is a short book as well. If you don't want to jump into something really long, it's really quite a short book. It's only 250 pages long. To me, this was like a little nugget of haunted house horror in a way that you don't necessarily see because it's set in suburbia, basically. But it's about uncovering the insidious parts that are embedded into this house and worming your way free of them to gain back that autonomy that it's taken away from you. And last on my list is The Mysteries of Thorn Manor. Now, I could include Sorcery of Thorns on this list, which is the main novel, but Mysteries of Thorn Manor is the spin-off novella, really spotlights the sentient house in this book. You do have to read Sorcery of Thorns first, otherwise it doesn't really make much sense. But it follows our two protagonists in their life after Sorcery of Thorns happens, and they're trying to put on this ball as a celebration of, you know what, I generally can't remember what it's a celebration of, but they're trying to put on this ball and the house won't let them because they've done something to piss it off and they can't work out what they've done to piss it off, but it won't let them leave until they've fixed it. This is a house that sort of creates rooms out of nowhere or shuts them off for years and decades at a time, that holds secrets really close to its chest, and like even Nathaniel, who's lived there all his life, still doesn't know all of the ins and outs of this house. It has a mind of its own, it's got traditions of its own, it's got its own ideas of what is proper and what is not, and it was just a really lovely little nugget of a novella. A lot of spin-off novellas and stories often feel like cash grabs, but this one was just really cozy and I loved it. But I also really love Sorcery of Thorns, so having an extra little story in that world was definitely a good thing for me. It was a bonus. That is all of my favourite Sentient Houses stories. Have you read any of these? Do you have any others that you would add to the list? I'm sure there's loads out there, but those are the ones that come to mind when I think of Sentient Houses. So let me know if you try any of them and if you like them. Did this video work? Have you taken any suggestions away? That's it for today. Thanks very much for watching and I'll see you next Sunday.